This is Rocky Snyder. At the tone, leave your name and message and I'll get back to you.
I have 12 big brothers.
You do not.
I swear to God. I swear to God. I'm lucky 13 right here.
What are they called?
Maki, Ricky, Danny, Terry, Mikey, Davey, Timmy, Tommy, Joey, Robbie, Johnny, and Brian.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the RockFit Files. I'm Rocky Snyder, and we're kind of coming to the end of season 4. But if you've been listening along, you know that every week we've been talking to experts and colleagues around the world about their relationship with what we call the flow motion model and anatomy in motion. And I just have the gift of bringing on somebody who I don't know what it was in the course one year back in Santa Cruz. We were taking it and this fellow walks in and instantly there is this energy in the room. And it surprises me nothing that he's actually from Massachusetts as well as me. So I got that brethren spirit in the room. Tom McCook is with me, and Tom is formally a Pilates, if we can use the word master or master instructor teacher, then he is it. He's been doing it since 1991. So it's 30-year anniversary of Pilates, and he's honestly the only personal trainer I have met in recent years who had started it before I did. So hats off to Tom. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Rocky. Great to be here with you.
Oh, it's great to see you. Yeah, now your facility is over in Mountain View in Silicon Valley, and but with COVID, you were telling me before the show, you have had to shut the operations down, at least physically. How's it been going?
We have Center of Balance. It's in Mountain View. We've had it for 25 years, and we have been closed since March. So we pivoted online within a week. We took our staff with us. We got some Zoom tutorials to figure out how to do this thing, and we just started right in on Zoom. We contacted all of our clients, all of our privates. For the most part, most of them wanted to continue, and we also do groups. As you can see behind me, I have some equipment. I have Pilates, and I have something called Coraline behind me. We can talk about it at some point, which is very relevant to the flow motion model. And so we were able to convert. For me personally, most of the people I work with are teachers, either Pilates teachers or movement teachers. So they typically have equipment at home that they can use. So that rollover worked out pretty seamlesly for me. And then for the rest of our clientele that are just people wanting to stay healthy and fit, that we're working with our teachers, they're just doing floor-based work and small props, balls, and bands out of their home. And we've been able to sustain, and people are happy with it. So it's been working out pretty well, even though we're down. Overall we're down, but we're surviving, and we're gonna plan on getting back into our studio when this thing subsides. I don't know if that's the right word, or at least opens up, where we can get back and doing our life a little better.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that soon. Once this airs, which here we are in February. I think we'll be showing this toward March, and hopefully by then everything has already opened up and blossomed, and we're back to where we need to be. So. First of all, you've been training or doing movement from a professional standpoint since the mid to late 80s, correct?
Yes. 1986, I started training people at Gold's Gym. I was the nighttime manager, and I'm the youngest of 12 kids. I got 8 brothers and 3 sisters, and I built a gym in my cellar when I was 11 years old with the goal of killing all my brothers. So
excellent. Perfect.
So I had some motivation. So I was training the whole neighborhood when I was 11 years old. I had all these in my neighborhood. There was probably 50 kids that hung out together. And I had people doing push-ups between bricks, doing pull-ups, hitting punching bags when we were like 10 years old or 11 years old.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
It was great. And I mean, I just have great memories of that time, but I started young. And then when I was managing the Gold's Gym at night, I just watched the way people were working out. And this is, as you know, this is the time when personal trainers were just beginning. There really wasn't many. There was like 2 in the gym. This other guy named Tom and another guy. And I just was watching the way people worked out, and it didn't look really well. And I wasn't really enjoying managing the gym. So I just started my own business. And within 3 months, I had a full schedule, and it's been that way since. It's been a really good ride for me, where I think I'm good at connecting with people, and I had a genuine interest in what we were doing, and it's been really good all the way through. And I just kept taking continued education every year from the beginning. I took all types of certifications and just kept interested, kept learning. And I think in 1988, I got exposed to shiatsu. I went to a demonstration. I'd never had a massage before. Growing up in Massachusetts, you don't touch anybody. It's like, what are you going to do that? You guys, as you know, that's not part of the deal.
No, only in the combat zone.
Exactly. So I fortunately got to be the guinea pig of the demonstration, and I had never had a massage before. And this guy was amazing. When he gave me a treatment, and it just like woke something up in me. I'm like, oh my God, there's a whole lot more to being healthy and how you can help people than just doing exercise. So I took his training, and that actually was the beginning of me looking at the body a little differently. That was like a year-long course. So I got really deep into body work before I got exposed to Pilates and somatics. Like after that, my girlfriend at the time she was an Aikido person, and she introduced me to this guy named Richard Heckler, who's the founder of the Strozzi Institute of Somatics. And I went up and I took his course, which was a year-long course in somatic education. And it just was like the first guy, I think, in my life who looked at me authentically and met me in a way that just went right to my heart. He just was such a brilliant, embodied person who I said, I just want to be around that guy. I don't care if we're just washing dishes. Those people that touch you that way.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just kept going. I did Feldenkrais training for like 4.5 years. And in the middle of that, I got exposed to Pilates because I asked this woman in the course, who's in great shape. I said, what do you do? She goes, oh, I do Pilates. I'd never heard of Pilates. And found a studio around the corner from my house where I was living in Palo Alto, and I could walk to the studio, and I started taking sessions. And at the time, I think I was 30. I was 30 at that time. So I've been lifting weights for almost 20 years, like 4 to 5 times a week or more, as you do. And I took one session and I stopped lifting weights. Because not that I had anything against lifting weights, but I knew I wasn't going to change the patterns in my body if I didn't take a different approach at that moment in time. And so that just kept, like, these cycles just kept spinning in different directions, just following my intuition and being pretty well guided by the universe, I guess you could say.
Honestly, your path is like New England weather. Just wait a second, it's going to change. Unbelievable. You just keep falling into some remarkable existences and opportunities to fill your toolbox. I'm jealous.
Yeah, and it was just, and I kept going in that direction because I came out to California when I was 20, one-way plane ticket. A buddy of mine lived out here, and I was attempting to go to school and work at the same time, and it just wasn't working that well for me. So I just started my own business when I was 24 and kept taking courses that I was interested in instead of the general education road, and that worked better for me. So I never completed college. I just kept going in the direction of what actually interests me, and I felt I became a good student out of that, opposed to not feeling like I was a good student when I was studying things I wasn't that interested in.
My gosh, I feel like our lives are so parallel, yet not so intertwined. But I mean, I felt the same way. I did graduate college just out of fear of not, but it wasn't like I was an amazing student. I would just stumble into the lecture hall because I hadn't been into class in a while, and suddenly there's an exam, and I was just fortunate to be there at that moment, and somehow they gave me a diploma. But it was until after that where I was exposed to movement. Not the same as yourself, but Aikido was in the past there, and different types of massage and energy work and so on. And I just got enthralled, and so found the same path in some ways that you did. And actually, I think, far better student these days than ever in the traditional realm. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really believe that everybody is smart. They just have to find something that they're really curious about and have the conditions set up where the learning environment is really inviting. And I got fortunate to find teachers that not only were good teachers, but they actually cared about you. And that was very healing for me on a lot of levels. And my curiosity just kept growing, which
Well,
is.
do you find too that when you explore things that you're passionate about, the level of anxiety and fear diminish? For instance, you mentioned that you started your business at age 24. That's a very young time. For myself, I was 28, so not that far later, but still, that's a very young time to move out from Massachusetts with just enough to make it over to the West Coast, a one-way ticket. I'm living your life right now. And but when you find something that you're passionate about, it takes a lot of that fear away. Is that what you felt?
Absolutely. Yeah. It gave me a purpose, gave me a focus. It gave me a reason to connect with like-minded people. Felt like it was very grounding and comforting to actually know that I actually found something that I'm not questioning, and I really have strong interest in, and I'm learning every day. When you have your own businesses, you're learning every day. You're showing up and connecting with people and learning especially in the beginning of the business, you're learning what doesn't work, and really getting it back to letting go of just basic systems around fitness, when the first step is what I learned from the teachers is connect with the person who hired you, connect with the students and help them figure out what they want. Let them communicate that, and let's work on that and educate them along the way, but don't be too attached to my own agenda about what they need. And that was a big moment of learning from the mentors I had, is just really just shut your mouth and listen. Just listen to the client and let them expose what they want, and them just being heard opens the door for them to trust you. And once your client trusts you, they'll go anywhere with you. They'll do anything you're offering if they feel like they're being valued, respected, and trusted. And
It's quite a paradox, though, isn't it? It's quite the it's almost counterintuitive, because you're the instructor, you're the one they're seeking information, advice, and education experience from, and yet you're saying that the best way to do that is to actually just listen.
Yeah, just listen, because I think for years I thought I needed to have all the answers, and the truth is, it's way more powerful to say, I don't know. Let's figure it out together. And then share with them that you've got some knowledge, but don't just lead with it. Like let them expose and and really value their intelligence, because they're bringing a lot to the table that doesn't get exposed if you don't ask. And they've got some history that you want to know about, and what's worked for them, what's not working. And I just find that it makes the working sessions much more rich and live and co-produced, instead of, I'm going to feed you the info, you're going to do it, and you're going to keep your head down and move when I tell you to,
Yeah. No, it's got to be a dance. There has to be a partnership. If we're going to be moving the body, it's not going to be a one-way street. I'm curious. I have had experiences, conversations, and like business relationships with a lot of Pilates instructors over the years. And our business, in the month of March, we celebrate our 25th anniversary. So we've been doing it a while, and find ways around it. But I'm curious about Pilates itself, because you were on the front edge of not only personal training, but Pilates popularity and the surge it took through the 90s and early 2000s, where you had all of these certification bodies trying to use the name Pilates. And of course, that was copywritten, and there was all the battling between all of these agencies and associations, but you weathered through that. What was that like in the last 30 years of navigating through all of the fanfare and bling to just maintain the true root cause of what you were trying to do?
That's a great question. I think in the beginning, I'm not very political myself, so I I was on the periphery of that, but I taught certifications for an organization called the Physical Mind Institute starting in 2000. And they're out of New York, and they were one of the first governing bodies for teaching certifications. And I think that whole lawsuit came up between people that were holding on to the, they're more classical driven, wanted to hold on to some tradition of Pilates. But I think it was really, when it gets to the bottom of it, it's more about money and power. But in 2007, I switched to a company called Balanced Body, who's the biggest manufacturer of the equipment in the world. They created an educational wing with this woman named Nora St. John and her husband, Al Harrison. And they're really open and inclusive around what do people need right now? So they actually opened up their educational system to be very interactive with their teachers. And it was just a really nice mix. And they created this thing called Pilates on Tour, which are educational workshops all around the world for Pilates teachers or movement professionals. And I've been on that system with them for the last 14 years. So that's been a really great place for me to get exposure around the world and learn from a lot of good people and really stay out of the politics. Because they did a really good job of being inclusive of everyone who was willing to be inclusive, instead of being tied into these tight camps, which are, when you put the two together, when you have the tight camp of this is the way it is, and you have a group of people that are really open, you see how ridiculous the other one looks, because it's just kind of, it's kind of like an example of fundamentalism, or, really just stiff ways of looking at the reality of black and white. And I've never seen things that way. And I just feel bad for people that get stuck in that. I value people's point of view, but our life is short, man. And let's actually get along. Let's get along and ask better questions, like how can we help each other, instead of who's got the right angle to their widget. you know what I mean? And,
I do.
And I found the Pilates work just a great vehicle for me to learn how to teach.
How so? What do you mean?
Because I didn't come from an educational and academic background, but here I am teaching academic courses. So I have to teach courses where I'm teaching the anatomy, and I'm teaching them a system of how to lay out sessions and do all this stuff, and how to teach each other. So I had to really learn how to give lectures. Like in 2000, when I got hired to do the teacher training, I think I had done 2 minutes of public speaking prior to that. And now I'm teaching a 15-hour course. And I had a coach at the time, and my coach asked me, it was like a Friday morning, he goes, how's your anxiety level? I go, oh, it's about an 8. And he goes, okay. So we went through, what are the worst things that could happen? And he goes, what are the worst things? Oh, yeah, okay, I could have a heckler. I could suck. I could run out of things to say. Blah, blah, blah. He goes, so we said, okay, let's go through each one. So we went through each one. What are you going to do if you run out of things to say? So you go, okay, I'm going to say, hey, let's take a break. I got nothing to say right now. What are you going to do if you get a heckler? I had a heckler. I go, I'll probably use humor and redirect it. That happened. Everything, I don't think they hated me, but everything happened that I expected, but I planned for it. And I wasn't stressed. And it was fine. It worked out really well.
Oh, that's amazing, actually. I was expecting you to say none of that happened, but every single thing did. But
all of it happened. But it was just an example of how the internal fear when you're approaching something new is always greater than the experience.
Uh-huh.
And it just was a great learning that, okay, if my mission is bigger than my uncomfortableness, I'm going to stay on my mission to really help people and learn and get better and help other people do the same. And that's kind of been my mode ever since. I just feel really grateful that I've been able to do that, and been able to travel and teach and take my wife with me and build in a couple extra days to go see a place we haven't been before, and meet some people, like-minded people that are really curious about teaching good movement and function. And that's what led me to coming down to your place to work with Gary too. I've known for some reason, whenever I hear about a course or a training, when I don't have any resistance to it, my intuition says, you got to do that. I just listen.
What happened in that case? How did you find out?
I found out from, who did I find out? One of my clients who has been working with had been working with a lot of people with PDTR and NKT, because he's had multiple surgeries in his neck and his lower back. And he said, and I think he even took the course, but he's not a movement guy, because he's just looking. He told me after, he goes, I go to courses now so I can pick out the best practitioners and then get sessions with them. Smart guy.
That's not bad.
You know, and so I checked it out with him, but then on a personal level, at the same time that he was telling me this was probably 6 years ago, I had a neuroma in my right foot fire out of my third toe for like the last 3 years prior, that I saw multiple practitioners, they didn't even touch it. No improvement at all. And you know, I had in that, and I just knew there had to be something that I could do that's different than even the Franklin work, a lot of work around the feet. But I really feel the missing piece, or the brilliance of what Gary has brought, is the learning how to load your foot points in the changing of your foot throughout the gait cycle. Day 5 of the course, my pain went away.
Wow.
First time in like 3 years, no fire in my third toe.
That's pretty spectacular.
I was like, holy shit. And all I was doing is, because I went back in my history, but I had frostbite as a kid a couple times when I was 5 years old. I think that was the beginning of my feet being compromised, and I broke some bones and did some stuff. But I realized in the course I was not getting over onto the right leg in shift and in suspension. I was like, my body was just slightly avoiding it. So those bones were not getting loaded correctly. And I think that was the root, created the conditions for this thing to set up and become a problem.
So amazing.
I mean, it's just amazing that the body, if you give it the right conditions, it'll heal itself.
Yeah. And you know, it's been said, I think Chris was the one really, that pain is measured in millimeters. Like you didn't really, how much did you really change in terms of the spacing of that neuroma and that bundle of irritation that was in your foot? It wasn't like you just completely opened up some space there, but it was just enough. There was just enough.
And then adding in the mental awareness of noticing.
Huge.
That was huge too. So then you put those two together, then your whole system is working together to upgrade your nervous system. And I just found that to be amazingly transforming. And ever since that day, I do the cogs every day. I use the wedges. I mean, I do it every day. And if I don't do it for a couple days, I'll be out walking, especially wearing shoes sometimes is not so good for me. I'll start to feel it.
So what's interesting is you have a litany of experiences and certifications or workshops that you have pursued over the course of the last 3 or 4 decades here. And I'm curious that when you explore something new and it somehow contradicts your previous learnings and creates a little turmoil within and somewhat of an inner conflict, how do you resolve that? Because you mentioned somatics, of course, Pilates. We've got. Did you do NKT or PDTR?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did NKT.
All that. I mean, there had to be moments in time where this teaching and information was not jiving well with other stuff. What happened?
Well, you know, I didn't. Because I think I didn't see any conflict, because I don't think anybody is addressing weight bearing like AIM is. Nobody is addressing the change that happens in your skeleton in real time when you walk.
You know, I never thought of that. Honestly, I just didn't consider that until this very moment, and you're absolutely right.
No one. They're doing like specific treatments. I mean, think of every bodywork treatment as treating somebody lying on their back.
Sure.
How does that relate to being in gravity?
Right.
It doesn't even at all. You know, I mean, the thing that I found, because when I was doing a lot of body work and just even from doing Pilates training, the revelation I had is you could do something with somebody on their back and really improve something, and they stand up and they're back at square one.
Hmm.
Like it didn't translate. Sometimes it does, but a lot of times it doesn't. And for me, because I did a lot of yoga for a lot of years and I work with a lot of people that tend to be more hypermobile, I think one of the things that I'm still, as you know, it's an ongoing learning curve. I'm learning how to decelerate the places that move too quickly in my body that are more hypermobile. And just that is changing my weight bearing on my feet.
Huge.
Huge, like unbelievable. Like, because I can take my knee, I could take my shin and go, I could probably take my shin like a foot in front of my foot, because I have mobile joints. I have a mobile ankle, I have a mobile hip, I have a mobile knee, and I don't feel any knee stress. But I've moved too quickly without loading my foot properly. And learning how to load my foot and keep my pelvis moving forward over my foot, I'm really feeling the correct opening of the underside of the midfoot in a way that I didn't feel prior, because I could, I'm sure I'm stretching my foot, but now I'm feeling, holy crap, I feel my 3 foot points being seriously loaded. And then I'm feeling all of my leg bones, and I'm not substituting in my lumbar thoracic junction when I lunge, which is, that's a mobile place for a lot of people, me included. And I just find like, wow, if you just like take that story of stretching out of your vocabulary and think about loading and really pay attention to it and slow it way down, I'm finding that to be super powerful for everybody, because I think one of the challenges of the AIM work is it's very complex. And as teachers, how do we simplify it for everybody where they can just really get into feeling that weight bearing and transfer on their foot over and over and over and over and over again, and make them really curious about that and give them the why. Like, why do you need to do that? You need your brain to register that. And you might need to do 3,000 reps.
Yeah. It's interesting that, the teachings, the understanding, the flow motion model itself, incredibly complex, so much information. You take the course and it's like drinking out of a fire hose. That's why so many of us have gone back time and time again, because we're bound to get something that we missed last time because we were so bombarded with amazing knowledge and information. However, it all boils down to the most simple things, like you just say. Are you moving at the right speed? Are you too fast here, or are you too slow? Are you experiencing properly landing on planet Earth?
Yes.
And are you properly experiencing leaving planet Earth? I mean, it just boils down to those simple kind of understandings. However, we had to go through the whole journey and all through the information to settle everything back in to the simplest understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also really teaching people about, like, even just the concept that you don't want to grab with your toes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the Pilates world, or even in the fitness world, when one thing I do like about Pilates, I like a lot of things about Pilates, but one of the things is they do work with the feet. You have people out of their shoes, which is, there's only small segments of the fitness world that work with people barefoot. It's improving, but it's, for a lot of years, people always wore shoes. But a lot of the exercises they would do would be like grabbing a towel and pulling the towel and doing all this stuff with your toes, which ultimately doesn't change your weight bearing. And really learning how to get your 3 foot points down and getting your rear foot and your forefoot to move in concert with each other is really where the gold is. And that's a whole nother, and that's I think one of the brilliant contributions that Gary's made to the world. If people just spend a ton of time on that, everybody would improve.
So really, not to jump on any real bandwagon or anything, I think the series itself has promoted anatomy and motion well on its own. But what you're really saying is that for a Pilates instructor who is already somewhat proficient with understanding the incorporating the foot into real human movement, that this is just the next logical process and stage of learning.
Absolutely. and allowing the knee to move inside, outside. Like let the knee move in towards the big toe. Let go of that exercise story that the knee is supposed to track over the second toe all the time. Because I mean, you think about that. You work with an athlete, and their knees all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to take them in a gym and you're going to keep them in a box. How is that going to prepare them for what they're doing in their sport? So that's, I've always questioned that. Like, luckily, I've always questioned the things I learned, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying with somebody's teaching something that's completely wrong, because we're all learning. So my strategy, and I tell my teachers to say, try it on for yourself. Try the opposite, if there is an opposite, and see how it feels.
Your body will tell you.
Your body will tell you. Yeah, your body's going to tell you.
Yeah.
And don't be too attached that somebody, said something wrong. Give them credit for putting themselves out there and trying to share something. And there's always going to be some nugget you can pull out of it, hopefully.
Now, you mentioned another approach or some other equipment that you've been using. And what is that that's behind you there?
Yeah, so that behind me is called the Coraline, and that's it has two independent tracks in a cart that move independently each other, and they're connected by bungee cords, 3 different weights: medium, light, heavy. And you can replicate gait where you pull the carts, you hold the ladder, you can go in different directions. You can put both carts in one track. You can do abduction, adduction. You can do a bunch of really relevant movements to being in gravity. And it was invented by a guy named Jonathan Hoffman, who's a PT from Israel. And he was a kite sailor, and also he worked with pro athletes. And he specialized in back pain. And it really teaches people how to extend their hip correctly and connect it to their foot. It's really, and that's his thing was, as people sit all day, they lose that 5 to 10 degrees of hip extension and just that little bit is a big contributor to back pain.
Huge. Now, is it connected to the stall bars there? Is it?
Yeah, so those bars are a ladder that you can hold on to do a bunch of the exercises. You can turn and face in different directions. So that's like a whole unit. And I teach in these blocks that you can put on it that are these little domes that you can use for your feet or your hands. It's a great thing. I'd love to show you sometime. You have to come up and try it out. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Very nice.
I'll put people in all of the phases of gait on there, where they can do repetitions where they're generating like suspension or heel strike or all that on that inside of movement with tension.
I love that because I carry those same joints relationships or mechanics into the traditional gym setting, right? When it comes to maybe traditional and non-traditional movements, and then how does that equate to pronation, supination mechanics, or one of the phases within the gait cycle? Can we just explore this? Not that we're trying to necessarily correct anything, because I think when we're under load for most people, there's a small percentage that need that extra load to actually kick things in. But for most people, doing it with just their body initially is great, but then they start to really find more access, and you're like, okay, well, let's play with these movements. And not just in a simple kind of exploration way with your body, but let's throw some rubber bands in there. Let's give you a dumbbell. We'll put this cable handle in here, or let's even try this barbell. I mean, it just completely broadens your spectrum of what you can do with people. And it takes a simple tool and completely expands its use.
Absolutely. And the good thing about that too is there's a balance element, because you're on these moving carts, even though you're holding onto a ladder. But because of that, it just ups people's attention, and they get this instant feedback if they fall out of alignment with gravity. So so the machine itself is like an extra cue. It's just giving them feedback, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm just, and you can see them, and because they're standing, you can stand behind them, and everything is just so visible in their body of what's going on. It just stands out pretty strongly.
You know, you have a lot of clients that you see online, and a lot of them you say are instructors themselves, and I imagine putting them through different movements. How has it been with these online sessions? Have you noticed certain skill sets that have diminished or have become more heightened since
Mm,
you've been only, kind of limited, relegated to just a visual kind of feedback?
yeah, I think I've gotten much more visually focused because they're all in this box. So I think it's been actually, in some ways, it's been easier to work with a group because they're all in the one box.
Ah,
So you're not looking like over here, there's somebody over here in the room and somebody over here. They're all on the screen doing the same exercise at the same time. And typically, as you know, where people break is usually the same places,
yeah.
or, for the most part. So you can kind of, so what I would do if I were doing an exercise and I'm seeing the break is happening kind of universally, I'll use that as a teaching moment. I'll stop the group and I say, listen, you guys, I'd like you to feel something for a moment. And then I might pull out a pelvis or something to show them what it should be doing and what it's currently doing. And let's try it again, see how it goes. So it's just been nice, and they're really into that. They want to move better, especially the teachers. But for the students, I just have been using more visual props. I'll use like bones, and I'll have these charts, and I'll show people stuff, and I'll pull out Sully, and we'll just have and I try not to make it too long, maybe like a 2 to 3 minute anatomy lesson, and then bring it back into the exercise, and then it seems to work well that way. You don't eat up too much time and make it too intellectual, but you tie it to what you're doing. And I think it's been good. I've been pretty impressed. In the beginning, I felt really tired being online. My eyes were sore, and I felt like my head was going to explode after like 5 hours in a row on Zoom. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But I think you adjust. You adjust to it. Like, we're all pretty adaptable. And I do probably 5 or 6 sessions a day on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then I have mentorship and workshops usually on Friday. Maybe once a month I'll do a master class on a weekend right now. So I've canceled all teacher trainings until we get back in our studio. I did a mat training throughout the fall virtually, but I'm not going to do any of the equipment training right now in this setting. So it's been nice actually to have more time and have more time to walk. And I used to drive 500 miles a week because I live in Moss Beach. I live on the coast about 60 miles north of you.
Yeah.
I live a mile from Mavericks. And so I was commuting to Mountain View, 40 miles each way every day. And now my world is like a 5-mile circle. It's like
So amazing. Yeah, beautiful area, Moss Beach. I'm sure your skeleton Sully there sneaks out every now and then and goes to Moss Beach Distillery.
oh
And
yeah, oh yeah.
got to drag him back home every now and then, I'm sure. But
We've caught him down there.
yeah, I think he still hasn't paid his bill. You might want to check with management. But we spoke of Coraline and how you have taken the flow motion model and overlaid it into the approach that you're doing. How does that work with Pilates? Like when you came back from taking the immersion course and understanding better gait mechanics and all that it entails, how did that affect what you were doing in regards to Pilates?
It amplified what I had learned from the Franklin work. So the Franklin work is really into the counter rotations of the pelvis and the spine in walking, that it's not square. And I think old school Pilates really speaks to keep the box square, like the front of the hips and the rib cage to the shoulders, keep that, in the sagittal plane. And I luckily never adopted that because I started taking Franklin work pretty, like 20 years ago. But I think what it did is it really amplified getting people to let the rotations happen more. And then I started to like put it more into the mat work and having people feel whenever they were twisting their torso, if they're on their back, feel the opposite hip get heavy on the floor, like the pelvis is counter rotating. So they start to really feel that the body is designed to counter itself. And people really liked the way that felt. I think I got good feedback from that. And I
Nice.
always include, like now I teach these 2 mat classes on Tuesday and Thursday that are drop-ins just to the general population. And I'll have people in there that are up to their, 80 plus. So I keep it pretty general, and I do all of the gate loading aim exercises in my class before I have them lie down. I have them do frontal plane. I don't do the specific cogs that are more challenging to teach people in a group, like the on axis. That's a little more challenging. I'll simplify it a little bit. I'll do the off axis one. I'll do the sagittal, and I'll do the transverse, but then I'll do the loading of the glutes, the hamstrings. I do all that before they even lie down.
Uh-huh.
Load their they really, I've had a lot of great feedbacks. People's lower backs are feeling better. They're feeling more confident on their legs. They're feeling stability and strength. And I don't even mention stretching. It's just, and it's been nice. So that's been a nice add, and that's really shifted to another level about really focusing on what are we doing inside of gravity all the time, and having a high percentage of your exercises addressing that. And I think that's, so I think probably in a typical Pilates class for me, I'm probably spending half of the time doing that before I even have people get to the traditional exercises.
Hmm. It's interesting that you mentioned the word stretching. And I don't think we speak often enough about the power of words, but we have certain movement patterns, but we have certain speech patterns, right?
Yeah.
And they go along with each other. You can't necessarily separate our speech from our bodies or our minds. So one little exercise I'll say is, if I find words that I overuse, then I give myself a challenge, and that is to try not to use those words in conversations. And one of them was the word stretch or stretching. And just becoming aware of that, like you say, has changed the way in which you communicate movement to a person. So for those listening, if you like using that word stretch, try finding something else. I mean, for me, it's like, can we load? Can we lengthen? Can we
Yes.
get an experience of change? Any of those things. But stretch doesn't tell me a darn thing.
No, because I think it can be like, what I watch with people is they'll quickly go into range of motions when there's no resistance or load on the 2 body parts that are moving away from each other. So I'll tell people, when they do that hamstring stretch, go really slow and challenge yourself to keep 50% of the weight on that front heel, even though your hip's going back.
Mm.
And you'll see them immediately slow down, and their form improves just from doing that, instead of seeing how far they can fold.
Yes.
And
And there's changes.
that's typically what people do.
It's amazing that when you change one thing, everything changes. When you change their tempo, when you ask them to slow it down, or when you ask them to load here more, the emotional and the energetic side of that individual, you can visibly see change.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I do that I learned from Eric Franklin, he's brilliant at, is whenever he teaches something, he tells you what it's for and how it's going to benefit you. So when I'm having people do that hamstring stretch, I'm saying to them, listen, this is related to when you're walking. This is your muscles teaching how to catapult you forward so you can move efficiently for the rest of your life.
You provide them with a reason for doing exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, instead of, we're not trying to make our muscles like old underwear. They don't rebound back.
Reminds me, I've got to go through my closet, but that's great. Give somebody a reason and let them experience what's going on, and it just gets cemented that much more, and the likelihood of compliance just escalates through the roof.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that like, one of the things that Eric would do, like, Eric's brilliant in a number of ways, but he created a pedagogy for how do you get somebody curious. And so you want to give them a little bit of information, make it personal to them, and then have them notice it and then compare. And then notice notice where was their mind when they were doing it, and was their mind in a useful place to support the experience?
Mm.
So that's a way you can use imagery. Imagery could be on positive self-talk, it could be metaphorical, it could be biomechanical. But science says 60 to 80% of the time we have negative self-talk. We're criticizing ourselves, the environment, each other, the weather, and that's having an effect on the experience we're having. So we have to expose that, really expose, God, I suck at this. Oh yeah, I can't wait till this exercise is over. Probably not going to get great results while you're doing it.
Yeah, good point. And I will say this carries over into getting people to move after you give them an experience or a movement. One of those other things, the other word from stretch is exercise. I used it earlier in the hour, but I really don't like using that word. I've been trying my best to create a habit away from that word, like stretching, because there's a connotation, and it's usually a negative kind of attribute that when you hear exercise, you see somebody's shoulders slump. They're going, oh, this is something I have to do. But an experience, well, that's something you look forward to, or a movement. There's something changing and dynamic when there is movement. And so you give this person an experience of a movement where you're getting them to load in a certain way or changing their timing. And then you ask them, okay, go ahead and walk around. And that's so on so many different levels. One, it's hopefully bringing some awareness into them, and you might encourage them with a question or cue them like, how does that feel now? Or what is that like? What is it you're feeling? Right. And then there you go. It just cements the importance of what you just had them share. And suddenly it's, they say, oh my gosh, this is magic. You're some Jedi Knight or whatever. But no, we just got you to do something different. We got you out of your patterns of behavior. And now look at you.
And you're tapping into a huge issue. You're tapping into I think of in general, I think in terms of exercise, most people see it as a necessary evil.
Yeah.
And even on top of that, strength is more valued than anything else in terms of exercise. Instead of our body's designed to be efficient.
How much, how hard, right?
How much, how hard. And I tell my clients a lot, listen, if you're going for strength and you haven't improved your biomechanics, you're just wearing yourself out faster. So,
Right.
We're designed to be the most efficient animal on the planet. Let's actually have movement feel good, because when it feels good, you want to move more and you'll enjoy your life more. Let's start there.
Well, that's the beautiful thing when you know that you're kind of in that zone with your instructors, with your clients, with your own body. When you tap in to clean, efficient movement and your body gets to experience that and it responds in kind, what I commonly see occurring is a wonderment from people that they want to go forth and do something that they have been wanting to do but have held back from. Whether it's, oh my gosh, I feel like I want to go out and garden, or I need to go out and rake the backyard, or I think I haven't taken the dogs for a walk this week. I need to, you know what I mean? It's like or somebody says, I feel like I want to get back into swimming. You hear that when everything comes together and you get them to move in a way that unlocks restricted areas and frees them up mentally.
Yes.
The world is their oyster.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that's a piece that I think we all can include in when we train people, is expose that unconscious negative piece of it. Like in terms of the spine, I teach a workshop on the spine, and I call it the mind in the spine. So I have them, I have a circle, and I'll have them. So what do you guys typically hear about the spine? And we'll write it on the board. Slip disc, pain, stiffness, cranky. So we'll write it all down, and I'll say, okay, you guys, let's just do some simple movements of the spine, and I'm gonna recite what we just wrote down. Stiff, cranky, rusty, and you can see everybody's a little inhibited to move, and then I'll ask them, so what do you want for your spine? And you'd be amazed, people don't have a lot of thoughts other than being out of pain. So I have to kind of feed forward, say, how about a fluid spine? How about an intelligent spine? How about a spacious spine? How about a youthful spine? And then it'll start to generate, and we'll write all that down. I'll say, okay, let's move, and I'll recite that. And you just see everybody just starts to move. And I just say to them, I say, listen, we don't just have an epidemic of back pain. We have an epidemic of negative thinking about the spine.
Ah.
Let's deal with that and then bring that to everything you do in a movement perspective, and your body will change right away because you're changing your internal experience of your body.
I love it. I love it. Just guiding people into a different way of thinking can change the way in which they move.
And as teachers, I find when I teach that way, I feel good after the session.
Yeah.
So it can just be like totally selfish. Like, I want to feel good at the end of the day when I'm working with people's bodies. And if I'm worn out and tired, there's something I need to look at.
I'm glad you understand that, because it's really all about me. Everything I do in my world is how can it benefit me? And if it just so happens to help somebody get out of pain, then that's just an added bonus. I see our New England roots are firm and in place, Tom. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has to be congruent. It can't be just like, okay, 5 more of those. And
no.
No.
You got to get something out of it. It's got to be a gift for everybody. This, I've had other guests on the podcast, and the hour flies by, but I think this is one of the fastest hours I have had, and I can't believe we're right near the end too. But definitely, I'd love to have another follow-up somewhere down the road.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Maybe once the doors are open, we can see your facility and what it's like.
That'd be great.
That would be fabulous. But until then, if there are some Pilates instructors or movement people or anybody in the realm of helping others that want to learn more about your facility, yourself, and so on, this is the opportunity. Let's find out how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, they could just go to centerofbalance.com, www.centerofbalance.com. I have a masterclass coming up in 2 weeks, which will be a combination of some of the AIM work, some of the Franklin method with Matt. It's 2 Sundays from tomorrow. And it's like an hour and a half, and it'll come with a handout, and they'll get the video for a week after if they're interested in that. But if they just want to touch in with me, my email is tom@centerofbalance.com. But on our website, they'll have all our info of upcoming events. And if they just want to check in and ask some questions, I'm open to that too. And I mean, I love connecting with like-minded people, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be with you. And I'm really curious about having a session with those club bells with you, man.
Oh yeah, we'll get those Indian clubs swinging, no problem. Yeah, that'll be fun. And I'll make sure that all of that contact information and connections are in the descriptions below the podcast, whether it's on the YouTube channel or wherever you're listening to this podcast. So just check the descriptions down there and you'll see some links for sure. Tom, this has been great. I hope that when this airs, the clouds have cleared, the sun is shining, and the facility is back up and running. Now, I just don't feel good about your commute, so I don't know what I can do about that, but all the best with the future for sure.
Thank you, my friend. So great to be with you, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to be with you today.
If you'd like to find out more information about the flow motion model, anatomy and motion courses, or Gary Ward himself, pick up a copy of his book, What the Foot, at findingcenter.co.uk. And while you're at it, pick up a copy of my book, Return to Center, where I take the flow motion model and apply it to strength training and conditioning. You can get a copy of that at rockysnyder.com. Thanks for listening.